First, thank you, Minister Alistair Bert, for meeting.
You're
me.
very welcome.
And thank you for the UK government for giving us this opportunity. Thank you. I have 3 questions.
Yes, that's fine.
The UK has proven many times that it's keen to achieve peace in the Middle East, especially in the occupied territories, Palestinian. I personally hail the UK's position towards Khan al-Ahmar and Eastern Jerusalem.
Yeah.
I also don't forget the UK support to the Palestinians in their suffering, and it's a 5-year economic aid worth £38 million. This aid gave the Palestinian youth many opportunities, and not to mention it's helping strengthening. Not to mention its help in strengthening the infrastructure. I would like, however, to ask how far can the UK government in putting pressure on Israel to stop its expansion in the occupied territories?
Thank you for your questions. The Middle East peace process and trying to resolve issues between Israel and the Palestinian people remains a major driver of UK foreign policy in the region. In answer to questions about pressure on Israel and settlements, the United Kingdom's position is clear. We see the settlement programme as a barrier, as an obstacle to peace. There are others as well, but we clearly identify it as that. We have taken action in the United Nations. We have supported resolutions that recognise that this settlement building is taking place on occupied land, and it should not be going on. We make individual representations to the State of Israel on their building programmes and comment when a new programme is announced or part of the process, because it can be a lengthy process in Israel of the announcement of settlements and then the building. We comment all along the line. However, we also recognise that the reality is that this is part of a process in the region which we hope will lead to 2 states, and that it is most likely that settlement building will be dealt with not as an individual measure but as part of an overall settlement and agreement between the State of Israel and the Palestinian people. And I think we're realistic enough to recognise that. So that is why we continue our efforts to see ideas brought forward to produce the ultimate agreement. We remain very clear that it should be 2-state. It should guarantee the security of Israel, but provide a viable Palestinian state. It has to involve Gaza as well as the West Bank. Jerusalem must be a shared capital, and there must be answers to the plight of refugees. And these are matters for negotiation. Into all that will come the land issue, most likely to be dealt with by appropriate land swaps. It's this that will ultimately decide the boundaries of the State of Israel, beyond which settlements won't need to be placed, and resolve the land issue for the people of Palestine as well. So that's the way we intend to do it. It's a mixture of disagreeing with Israel and being very clear on what we think are wrong about the settlements, but recognising that the ultimate answer it will be as part of an overall agreement.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to see in the UK government in the near future a great role by the UK government to overseeing peace process between the Palestinians and Israelis as pre-1948?
The UK is very conscious of its history in the area. Time of mandate, 1948, we're well aware of that. I don't think in terms of the short answer to the question we're likely to oversee a process, but do we wish to be part of such a process? The answer is yes. 2 or 3 things are clear. Firstly, there must be an ultimate agreement between the Palestinian people and its representatives and the State of Israel. Nothing will replace that direct negotiation. Secondly, the United States will continue to play an important part. We have disagreed publicly with the United States position on refugees recently and on its view of Israel, and we will not be moving our embassy, for example, in relation to that decision. But we recognise that the United States will still play a considerable part, both for its economic power and its relationship with Israel. So the primary responsibility at the moment is through the envoys who have been charged by the President of the United States to do this work on bringing forward ideas. We are in contact with them, but they have not shared with us, as they have not shared with anyone, what the shape of their proposal might be. But we've made it very clear that when that comes forward, we're very keen to play a part in developing those proposals, and we want to work with them at that stage and with our friends in the Palestinian Authority and the State of Israel to try and achieve a settlement. So at that stage, we hope very much to be engaged and part of the process.
Yes. The last question about the UK position about Eastern refugees coming to Europe.
We have recognised that if you take the Syria crisis, for example, the number of those displaced, many millions of people have had to leave Syria. It has been the largest collective effort by the United Kingdom in terms of support. Nearly £3 billion has been spent by the United Kingdom in providing for refugees in Turkey, in Jordan, and in Lebanon in particular. And that has been to help the agencies provide food and shelter for them, for water, for livelihoods. And above all, we hope and recognise that people will one day return to Syria. Our view has been that the closer refugees are to their place of origin, the more likely it is to return. We know that some refugees have come to Europe, and we have accepted some refugees as well. But in general and in principle, the United Kingdom feels that if refugees can be safe and accommodated fairly close to home, they are more likely to return, which is by and large what the vast majority of refugees want to do. So we will take some, and we have taken some who are in particular difficulties. We've taken some unaccompanied children, but essentially we want people to be handled locally and return. And we're also very conscious these days that people do traffic in human beings, will use refugee routes in order to follow illicit criminal activity, and we are very keen not to give any encouragement inadvertently to such a process. And I think our policy should remain doing everything we can to support people locally and nearby to their place of origin, but be prepared in extremis to look after those who need most assistance.
Thank you, Mr.
Pleasure.
Faisal Naigel, political science student at King Saud University and youth writer. First of all, I want to thank you for meeting us and thank the UK government for this chance. My first question is, how does the UK see the youth people of the Middle East and North Africa, and what the main differences between them and the British ones?
Okay, it's very good to see you, and thank you very much for your question. First of all, we're very encouraged that young people in the Middle East have an interest in the United Kingdom and want to be engaged with us. I think the very short answer to your question, how do we see young people in the Middle East, is we see it as an opportunity for the region. It's a young region. The population of the Arab world will increase by about a third between 2018 and 2050. So in just a period of just over 30 years, there will be a lot more people who will be looking for jobs, who will be growing up in the Middle East, and they have a tremendous contribution to make, and they are a great opportunity for the region. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we would recognise that they live in an area of culture, of history and tradition, and all societies are a blend of what young people themselves want to do that's different, and how they recognise and make sense of their background and heritage and bring that to use. Now, in some areas this is easier than others. Societies have different views about tradition and heritage. Some societies are absolutely very, very anxious to hang on to everything from the past because they fear changes in the future. The modern world, it has to come to terms that nothing ever stays the same. And so each society is a blend. Young people will bring their own ideas forward as to what they wish to see. And if they're wise, and if older people in society are wise, they will use that energy and talent, but it will fit within a structure, a cultural structure in the region, and create a whole society. And the society is not, the Arab world is not uniform. It's very different between North Africa. Morocco and Tunisia are very different from some states in the Gulf, for example, or Iraq and Jordan. So places are different. So they will learn from each other, and they will develop their talent. We want, thirdly and lastly, we want to encourage young people throughout the region to see the United Kingdom as a partner and a friend. We have many scholarship opportunities for them, opportunities to come and learn in the UK, opportunities to work with the British Council abroad and absorb some of our culture. So we see younger people in the region as partners and friends, and as a great opportunity for the development of the region. And some of the smart young entrepreneurs and the people who will use new technology will build new businesses, new industries, new employment for people, and they will take the Middle East on in leaps and bounds.
My second question is, what do you think the reasons behind the continuing problems in the region?
I wish I knew. They're a mixture of things. We are very fond of the region. The Middle East means a lot to the United Kingdom. We've spent a lot of time there. Some of it has been good, some of it has been less good. But we spent a lot of time there. And we have a great humility about it, because many people in the region are our friends, and they remind us of what we have done, but they look to us as a friend, and they look to us to assist in some of the issues that face them. And they want us to use our knowledge of the region in order to help and assist, whether that's in technological development, business development, or whether it's in relation to politics. It seemed to me, from my experience, politics and the issues in the Middle East are governed by a number of things. Firstly, there's geography. Some big states rub up against each other. Egypt and Iran and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. That geography isn't going to change. Those states aren't going to go away. They're going to have to find an accommodation as to how they work with each other. Secondly, communities are identifiably different. Persians are Persians, Arabs are Arabs, and their identities matter a great deal to them. Faith is important. There are different faiths in the region. They hold their faiths to be very important. It forms a fundamental for their lives. From time to time, those faiths do come in conflict with each other. They shouldn't. And those of faith, of all faiths, will look to find ways in which people can live with each other. But from time to time, there are those who use faith not for that purpose, but to create differences between people. And the region has been prone to that. And then you have pure politics. Israel, the issues surrounding Israel, the issues of people's borders, the issues of governance, whether governance is accepted by the people, because there are different governance structures right across the area, from the Gulf to the Levant to North Africa. There are strong authoritarian leaders, there are democratic structures, and there are societies ruled by a different form of accepted consent. All these things come together in a mixture, and some of them are not resolved by discussion and by mutual interest. Some of them occasionally are solved by people seeking one interest over another. The United Kingdom's role, I think, is to try and offer advice, support, sometimes to help with ladders to climb down where people have put themselves in difficult position, and above all, to try and use the example of continental Europe and ourselves. We were affected by conflicts for centuries. They caused 2 great world wars in the 20th century. And we found a way to resolve those issues between us. And the idea that France and Germany, whose conflicts led to wars throughout history, of going to war at present is almost inconceivable. We've been able to move on. We've been able to remember our past, but to make forgiveness and to find a new way forward. Sometimes I find in the Middle East it's a bit difficult to run such a concept, but maybe people have to find these things. So we hope by advice and support and encouragement to help resolve some of the conflicts that are there.
Okay, that's my third question. What's the role that UK playing now to solve these problems in the Middle East?
I hope we're a friend. I hope we can be relied upon as a go-to country to offer honest advice. We're not the biggest, we're not the richest, we don't have the most military power, but we have been around for a long time. And I find in my experience, states where there is a crisis, often it's the British ambassador who people will go and see. How do we deal with this? What do you think? And they will ask our advice. States are perfectly well prepared and able to cope with almost anything, but everybody likes advice from somebody else. The UK can play a part there. We've got a history in the region. We've become good, we hope, at diplomacy, at offering some degree of mediation where it's appropriate. I think we've also learned where to stay away, where it's not our problem, and where we have to encourage people to find their own answers to things. But I hope we will always be a friend, I hope we will always be a voice, I hope we will always be a go-to state for people to come to, and I hope people will always appreciate that whilst every nation operates through its own interests, we see our interests as bound up with the security and stability and the nature of those that we work with in the Middle East, and the great friendships and affections there are amongst the peoples of the Middle East, the United Kingdom, that's reciprocated with us. I hope that makes people feel that we care about the region, and perhaps that's one of the most important things that we can impart to those who are looking for help.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I wish you well in your future careers, and I hope you go on to, I'm sure we'll hear more of you as the years go on. And thank you for taking part in this competition.